The kick came from the side without warning. Leo felt the impact in his stomach and fell to his knees on the cold floor of the convenience store. The coins he had been holding so carefully scattered across the dirty linoleum, making a metallic clatter that seemed to echo through the entire shop. The security guard, a large man with eyes void of compassion, pointed angrily toward the door. "Get out of here, you filthy brat! You're stinking up the whole place!" The people around stopped what they were doing and stared, but not with pity. They looked with disgust, with contempt, with that look Leo knew all too well. A woman clutched her purse tighter, as if the 12-year-old boy were about to steal something from her. A man in a suit chuckled under his breath and recorded it all on his phone, probably to post on social media with some sarcastic caption. No one helped Leo get up. He gathered the coins with trembling hands, mentally counting $7.50. He was just $2.50 short of his $10 goal. 3 days of hard work, 3 days of collecting cans under the 100-degree sun, 3 days of being kicked, spat on and cursed at. And now here he was, on the cold floor, gathering dirty coins while people treated him like trash. Because to them, that's exactly what he was. This boy was only 12 years old. He had been living on the streets for 3 years, ever since he lost his mother to an aggressive cancer that devoured her body in 6 months. He woke up every day at 5 in the morning, when the sun was still just a promise on the horizon, to collect cans from the dumpsters before the other canners arrived. His fingers were perpetually cut from handling crushed cans, broken bottles, and the scraps that people threw away without a second thought. In 3 days of arduous labor, under a scorching sun that burned his already scarred skin, he had managed to collect just $10. $10 that represented everything he had in the world. It was the difference between eating or starving for another week. It was the difference between having the strength to go on or simply giving up on everything. Each coin carried an enormous weight, not just in metal, but in hope. But when he saw that pregnant woman crying desperately in front of the pharmacy because she didn't have the money to buy special formula for the baby she was expecting, something inside him broke. It wasn't the first time Leo had seen desperation in someone's eyes. He saw it every day when he looked in the broken mirror of the public restroom, but there was something different about this cry, something that touched the boy's tired heart deeply. He didn't think twice. He didn't calculate consequences, weigh pros and cons, or make any rational analysis. He simply held out his dirty hand with the 10 crumpled, sweat-dampened dollars and offered everything to this unknown woman. "Here, Mum. Buy the milk for your baby." His voice came out hoarse, weak, almost a whisper. The woman looked at him with wide eyes, unable to process what was happening. What Leo didn't know was that this woman was not an ordinary pregnant woman in a desperate situation. She was Eleanor Vance, one of the wealthiest and most influential investors in the United States, with a fortune estimated at over $3 billion. And she was there in disguise, participating in an extreme test of human kindness. A test she had repeated 47 times in different cities with different people, and all of them had failed miserably. And what happened after that simple choice, that thoughtless gesture from a boy who had nothing but gave everything, changed that boy's life forever. This is the true story of how an act of extreme kindness, coming from the one who had the least in the entire world, revealed the true meaning of wealth. A story that proves that sometimes the greatest treasures are not kept in bank vaults, but hidden in the most unlikely hearts. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. Oh, and be sure to comment below where you're watching from. We love to know. And now, get ready to discover how a street kid with only $10 in his pocket taught a billionaire the true value of humanity. Because what you are about to hear will completely change the way you see the world. 3 years earlier, Leo was just an ordinary 9-year-old kid. He lived in a small, simple house in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, New York, with his mother, Maria. The house had only 2 tiny rooms, a bathroom that was always clogging, and a kitchen where 2 people could barely fit. But to Leo, that place was a palace, because it was filled with something no amount of money can buy: unconditional love. Maria worked as a cleaner in 3 different houses. She woke up at 4 in the morning and only came back at 9 at night, with swollen feet and calloused hands from scrubbing other people's floors. She earned only $1,200 a month, which was barely enough to pay the $400 rent, the basic bills, and the simple food she put on the table. There was never anything left over, not ever. But she always said, "Son, we may be poor in money, but we're rich in heart." Leo loved the nights with his mother. Even exhausted, she always found time to sit with him and tell stories. They weren't stories from expensive books, because they had no books. They were stories from her life, of the grandmother Leo never knew, of hard times she had overcome with dignity. And all the stories ended with the same lesson: no matter how hard life gets, never lose your kindness. That's your greatest treasure. But then came the cancer. It started as a persistent cough that Maria ignored for months because she had neither the time nor the money to see a doctor. When she finally went to a clinic, it was already too late. Advanced stage lung cancer. 6 months to live, maybe less. Leo remembers every detail of that day. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital, the sound of the doctor's heels on the hallway floor, and the sound of his mother's muffled sobs in the bathroom. The last few months were a descent into hell. Maria lost her job because she could no longer work. The money ran out quickly. The rent was a month late, then 2, then 3. The landlord, a heartless man, evicted them a week after his mother's funeral. Leo was 9 years old and completely alone in the world. There were no aunts, cousins, grandparents, no one. It was just him against a world that couldn't care less about one more abandoned child. The first night on the street was the worst experience of Leo's life. He cried until he had no tears left, clutching a crumpled photo of his mother that he kept in his pocket. The cold was intense, the hunger ached like stabbing knives in his stomach, and the fear was paralyzing. He didn't know where to sleep, what to do, how to survive. He seriously considered just lying down and waiting for death to take him too, so he could be with his mother again. But then he remembered her last words. "Promise me you'll be strong, my son. Promise me you'll live." And Leo promised. So he learned to survive. He learned where to sleep without being beaten by the police. He learned which shopkeepers gave away expired food and which ones called security. He learned to collect cans in the early morning, to avoid the gangs, to not trust adults who offered help with ulterior motives. He learned to be invisible when necessary and visible only when it was safe. He learned to live with constant hunger, with biting cold, with a loneliness that hurt more than any physical blow. The city's inner core became his territory. Mr. There, among the homeless, the prostitutes, the drug dealers, and the addicts, Leo built his life of survival. Antonio, the owner of a bakery that had been closed for years, let him sleep under the awning. Marco, a feared local dealer, protected Leo from other criminals, not out of kindness, but because he saw the boy as harmless. Ms. Rose, a 60-year-old flower seller, always saved her leftover lunch to give to the boy. But even with these small kindnesses, life on the streets was brutal. Leo saw things no child should ever see. He witnessed deaths, assaults, beatings, overdoses. He saw people being treated worse than animals, being kicked just for existing. He saw humanity at its absolute worst. And with each passing day, it became harder to remember his mother's words about not losing his kindness. How could you be good In a world so cruel, the opposing force in Leo's life wasn't a specific person, it was something much larger and more terrible, the total indifference of society. It was the look of disgust from people, the random kicks, the insults, the constant rejection. It was waking up every day knowing that to the world he was invisible, or worse, a problem to be ignored. That was the true antagonist of the story. The coldness of a system that abandons its most vulnerable and then blames them for being there. Leo woke up that Tuesday at 5 in the morning, as always. The cold cut through the torn t-shirt he had been wearing for 2 years. His bones ached from sleeping on the hard concrete of the awning, and his stomach was rumbling so loudly it seemed to be screaming for food. But he didn't have time to feel sorry for himself. If he wanted to eat anything that week, he had to work. And work, for a 12-year-old street kid, meant collecting cans before the adults woke up and took the best spots. He grabbed his torn plastic bag and started walking through the still empty streets of the city. The first dumpster was 2 blocks away, on the corner of Jefferson Avenue. Leo stuck his small hands between broken bottles, rotting food scraps, and medical waste. His fingers were so calloused and cut that he barely felt the pain anymore. He found 3 cans. It was a bad start, but it was a start. He kept walking, moving from dumpster to dumpster, silently competing with other canners who also needed to survive. The sun rose strong and merciless. By 9 in the morning, the temperature was already over 95 degrees. Leo felt his head throbbing, his vision blurred from time to time, and the thirst was unbearable. But he couldn't stop. He needed that $10. It was just $10 miserable dollars, but it represented the difference between eating or going hungry for another whole week. By 11 in the morning, he had managed to fill half a bag. He ran to Old Man Joe's scrapyard, who paid 50 cents a pound. "This is too light, kid," grumbled Old Man Joe, a 60-year-old man with the smell of cheap liquor on his breath. "This here won't even get you $3. Leo felt desperation tighten in his chest, but he said nothing. He took the $2.90 in dirty coins and went back to the streets. First day, less than $3. He needed 7 more to reach 10. The second day was even worse. It rained in the morning, and the cans got wet and heavy, which reduced their value. Leo worked for 12 hours and earned only $2.30. On the third day, a miracle happened. Leo found a new collection spot, a birthday party that had ended in the early hours. There were dozens of soda and beer cans scattered on the ground. He filled 2 bags and ran to the scrapyard. $5.30. Adding it all up, he had finally made it. $10.50. 3 days of brutal work under the scorching 100-degree sun, being kicked, cursed at, and humiliated. But he had done it. He held the coins tightly, as if they were the greatest treasure in the world. Leo decided to go to Mr. Antonio's old spot, now a small deli, to buy bread. With $10, he could buy 5 fresh rolls and still have $5 left over. It was a fortune. For the first time in weeks, he wouldn't go hungry. He walked through the streets with a small smile on his lips, imagining the taste of the warm bread. But then, as he passed the city pharmacy, he saw something that made his heart stop. A pregnant woman sitting on the sidewalk, crying desperately, her hands covering her face. Leo stopped and watched. The woman was about 30, very well dressed. A clean white blouse, new jeans, expensive shoes. She didn't look poor, but she was crying as if her world were collapsing around her. Leo knew that kind of cry. It was the cry of absolute despair, the same cry his mother had when she found out she wouldn't have money for her treatment. He stood there hesitating. Should he help? But how? He needed that food himself. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Leo's voice came out weak, almost inaudible. The woman looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked at the dirty, barefoot boy in torn clothes and hesitated before answering. I need to buy special formula for my daughter. She has a serious medical condition. But I left the house without my wallet, and my phone is dead. I need $15 for the formula." Her voice trembled, each word an immense effort to keep from breaking down completely. Leo looked at the coins in his hand, $10.50. 3 days of hard work, 3 days without eating properly, 3 days of humiliation. His stomach ached so much, it felt like there was a knife inside. His head was spinning from weakness. He knew that if he gave away that money, he would spend at least another full week without eating anything. Maybe he wouldn't survive. Maybe he would collapse on the street and no one would help him. Maybe he would die right there, alone, like an abandoned animal. But then, like a lightning bolt through his mind, Leo remembered his mother's last words. She was in the hospital bed, so thin she looked like a skeleton, her skin jaundiced and her eyes sunken. She held her son's small hand with what little strength she had left and whispered, "Son, no matter how hard life is on you, no matter how much money you have or don't have, always help those who need it more than you. Always. Because kindness is the only treasure no one can take from you." And Leo had promised. He had promised he would be good. "I only have $10, Mom," Leo said softly, holding out the dirty, sweat-damp coins. "It's not enough, but please, take it. Maybe you can get the rest by asking someone in the pharmacy." The woman looked at the coins, then at the boy's face, then at his torn clothes, his bare feet, his cut hands. Her eyes widened in absolute shock. She seemed incapable of processing what was happening. A street kid, clearly starving, was offering everything he had to a complete stranger. "Son, I can't accept this," Eleanor whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You need to eat, you're so thin. Please keep this money for yourself." But Leo shook his head firmly. There was a determination in that boy's tired brown eyes that Eleanor had never seen in anyone before. "You need it more than I do. Your baby needs it more than I do. I'll get more money later, but your baby needs it now." And he placed the coins in the woman's hand, closing her fingers over the money. Eleanor felt the tears stream down her face again. But now they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope in humanity. She took the money, murmured an almost inaudible "thank you," and went into the pharmacy. Leo stood there on the sidewalk, watching the woman disappear through the door. His stomach ached even more, as if protesting the decision he had just made. But deep in his chest, there was something warm, something good. He had helped someone. He had honored his mother's memory. Leo started walking back to the awning. Each step was heavy, and weakness was taking over his body. He had given everything. Now he had nothing, absolutely nothing. When he reached his home under the abandoned awning, he simply lay down on the cold ground and closed his eyes. The first day without food was terrible. The hunger was a constant physical pain, like claws tearing at his stomach from the inside. Leo tried to collect more cans, but his body was too weak. He managed to get only 40 cents. The second day was worse. Leo could barely stand. His vision was blurry all the time, and he had dizzy spells so strong he had to lean against walls to keep from falling. Ms. Rose, the flower seller, gave him half of her sandwich. It was the only thing Leo ate that day. The night was endless, filled with terrible cramps in his legs and stomach. He cried softly, alone in the darkness, questioning if he had made the right choice. On the third day, Leo fainted for the first time. He was collecting cans near the train station when his legs simply gave out. He fell in the middle of the sidewalk. People stepped over him, walked around him, complained that he was in the way. No one stopped to help. No one called an ambulance. No one cared. After 15 minutes unconscious under the scorching sun, Leo woke up alone, disoriented, and weaker than ever. He managed to crawl into a patch of shade and stayed there, too weak to move. The fourth day was marked by hallucinations. Leo saw his mother sitting beside him, stroking his hair, telling him everything would be okay. He saw food that wasn't there, smelled things that weren't present. His body was starting to shut down, cell by cell. Other homeless people tried to help. Marco, the dealer, brought him half a cup of water. Mr. Antonio gave him 2 stale bread rolls. Ms. Rose cried when she saw the boy's condition and offered what little she had. But it wasn't enough. On the 5th day, Leo could no longer get up. He lay under the awning, staring at the grey New York sky, waiting for death to come. He had no more strength to fight. His body felt like it weighed a ton. His mind floated in a state between consciousness and unconsciousness. He thought, was it worth it? Does being good in such a cruel world really matter? Mum, I tried. I swear I tried. Tears streamed silently from the corners of his eyes, wetting the cold concrete beneath his head. It was at that moment, when Leo was about to give up on everything, that he heard voices around him. Loud voices, laughing, mocking. He opened his eyes with difficulty and saw 4 men in suits, all with phones in their hands, recording a video of him. "Look at this homeless guy, everyone," one of them said, laughing loudly. "He's about to die and nobody cares. What a great city." They laughed louder. One of them kicked cold water at Leo, drenching his face. "Wake up, kid. You're ruining the scenery here." More cruel laughter. Leo didn't even have the strength to be angry. He just closed his eyes again, accepting that this was his end. He was going to die right there, in front of everyone, and be turned into a viral joke on the internet. What a pathetic end to a life that had already been so hard. But then, something unexpected happened. The sound of a powerful engine, the sudden silence of the mocking men. Leo opened his eyes and saw, through his blurry vision, a black limousine pulling up right in front of him. The door opened, and out stepped the pregnant woman. The pregnant woman was no longer pregnant. She was now wearing an impeccable white pantsuit, elegant high heels, and carried an expensive leather briefcase. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like a powerful executive because that's exactly what she was. The 4 men in suits who had been mocking Leo froze, their smiles dying on their lips. The woman's presence radiated power, wealth, authority, and she was looking directly at the boy, collapsed on the sidewalk. "My name is Eleanor Vance," she said in a firm voice, completely ignoring the 4 men. 2 enormous bodyguards got out of the limousine behind her. "I am an investor and the CEO of Vance Capital, with a net worth of $3.2 billion. The men instantly turned pale. Everyone knew that name. Eleanor Vance was a legend in the financial world, ruthless in business, famous for destroying the careers of dishonest people, and there she was, standing in front of them, with an expression of absolute fury on her face. "You," she pointed to the 4 men, "are you recording a starving boy to post on social media as a joke?" Her voice was pure ice. "Did you kick water on him? Did you laugh at his agony?" The men began to stammer pathetic excuses, but Eleanor held up a hand, silencing them. "I want your full names, the companies you work for, and your unlocked phones, now." Her voice permitted no disobedience. The bodyguards took a step forward. The terrified men complied immediately. "You have all just lost your jobs," Eleanor continued, taking the phones and noting the information. "I will be personally calling each of your employers, and I will make sure that the entire country knows exactly who you are and what you did." She held up the videos they had recorded of Leo being kicked, drenched, and mocked. "These images will go viral, yes, but not in the way you imagined. Now get out of my sight before I decide to sue you for attempted murder." The men fled, pale with terror. Eleanor knelt beside Leo, who was looking at her with glazed eyes, unable to process what was happening. "Leo," she whispered softly, "do you remember me? 5 days ago, you gave me your last $10 so I could buy milk for my baby." The boy blinked slowly, the memory returning gradually through the fog of hunger and exhaustion. "But you weren't really pregnant." His voice came out weak, confused, almost inaudible. "No," Eleanor admitted, and genuine tears began to stream down her face. I was testing people's humanity, because 6 months ago I lost my baby in a car accident. I was 8 months pregnant when a drunk driver hit my car. My son died. And since then, I completely lost faith in people. I decided to conduct a test, to disguise myself as someone in extreme need and see if anyone at all, would help without expecting anything in return. Leo listened in silence, each word slowly penetrating his exhausted mind. Eleanor continued. I did this test 47 times, Leo. 47 times in different cities across the country. I asked for help from priests, doctors, businessmen, teachers, even people who work for charities. People who are supposed to be kind by nature. And do you know how many helped me? She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. None. Absolutely none. They all found excuses. They all looked away. They all ignored me. Until I came here, to the poorest and most violent place I could imagine. And I found you, a 12-year-old boy, homeless, who hadn't eaten in days, who had only $10 earned from 3 days of brutal work. And you gave me everything, without hesitation, without asking my name, without expecting anything in return. Eleanor had to stop because she was sobbing now. You were the only one. Out of 48 people tested, you were the only one who passed. The only one who proved that genuine kindness still exists in the world. Leo felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't happiness, it was anger. An anger that started small and grew until it exploded. You were testing me. His voice came out stronger now, trembling with indignation. I almost starved to death. I went 5 days without eating. I fainted twice, and it was all a test. He tried to get up, but his legs wouldn't obey. You used me. You used my kindness like it was some science experiment, like I was a lab rat. Eleanor lowered her head, shame marking her face. You have every right to be furious. What I did was cruel, selfish, and flawed. I was so lost in my own pain that I didn't think about the consequences for the people I was testing, especially for you, who was in such a vulnerable situation. She looked into Leo's eyes with absolute sincerity. I have no excuses. I only have one request. Let me fix this. Let me help you now. Please. Her voice was a pure plea. Leo looked at Eleanor with eyes full of tears of anger, confusion, and exhaustion. Part of him wanted to scream, to curse at her, to tell her she was no different from all the rich people who walked by him every day without seeing him. But another part of him, a small, tired part, just wanted it all to be over. Why should I trust you? His voice came out broken, vulnerable. How do I know this isn't just another test, another game for a bored rich person? You shouldn't trust me, Eleanor answered with brutal honesty. I don't deserve your trust, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that I am more than the worst mistake I ever made. I'm offering not charity, not pity, I'm offering dignity, a home, an education, healthcare, and the chance to have a voice in the decisions about your own life. You wouldn't be my charity project. You would be like the son I lost. Her voice broke on the last sentence. Leo closed his eyes. The hunger, the weakness, the exhaustion, it all weighed on him like a mountain. It would be so easy to just accept, to say yes, get in that limousine and never go hungry again. But something in him resisted. Pride, fear, or maybe the memory of so many times adults had promised help and then disappeared, or worse, abused his trust. If I accept, he said slowly, it has to be on my terms. I'm not a pet. I'm not a trophy for you to show off to your rich friends. What are your terms? Eleanor asked immediately, without hesitation. Leo opened his eyes and faced her with an intensity surprising for a 12-year-old boy on the verge of collapsing from weakness. First, you don't tell this story to anyone. No motivational videos, no social media posts, no using my life as an inspiring example. My life is mine, not content. Eleanor nodded gravely. Agreed, and second, Second, you won't treat me like a poor victim. You will listen to me, you will respect my opinions, and you will let me be part of the decisions about my own life. I'm not a stupid kid just because I lived on the street. Eleanor smiled for the first time, a small but genuine smile. I completely agree. Third, Leo hesitated before continuing. Third, if you really want to help me, then you have to help other street kids too, not just me, because there are hundreds of kids suffering out here every day. Eleanor held out her hand. I accept all of your conditions, and I'll add one of my own. You will have the key to the exit door. If at any moment you want to leave, you can. No questions, no judgments. The door will always be open, both ways. Leo looked at the outstretched hand, that white, soft hand, full of expensive rings. So different from his own small, dirty, cut and calloused hands. That hand represented everything he never had: security, comfort, a future. But accepting that hand meant trusting again. It meant becoming vulnerable. It meant depending on someone. And the last 3 times Leo had trusted adults, he had been betrayed, abused, abandoned. His heart was racing, his hands were shaking, his mother's voice echoed in his mind. Son, no matter how much you get hurt, never let fear win. Always have the courage to try again. But the voice of fear replied, what if she hurts you too? What if this is all a lie? Leo started to have a panic attack. His breathing became rapid and shallow. The memories came back like an avalanche. His mother dying in the hospital, the eviction, the first night on the street, the men who tried to abuse him, the constant hunger, the kicks, the spitting, the humiliations. It all came back at once, crushing him. He began to cry deep sobs that shook his thin body. I can't, he whispered. I can't trust again. It hurts too much when it goes wrong. Eleanor didn't try to hold him. She didn't try to convince him. She simply stayed there, kneeling beside him, waiting. After several long minutes, she spoke softly. Leo, look at me. The boy lifted his red, swollen eyes. I can't promise that I'll never disappoint you. I'm human, and humans make mistakes. But I can promise you one thing. I will try every single day to be worthy of your trust. And if I fail, I will admit it. I will apologize. And I will try to fix it. Leo took a deep breath. He thought of his mother, of her last words. Never let the world steal your kindness. That is your greatest treasure. He had given his last $10 to a stranger because he believed that. Because he believed that doing good was more important than his own survival. And if he gave up now, if he let fear win, then those $10 would have been for nothing. All the pain would have been for nothing. Slowly, his hand shaking violently, Leo reached out and touched Eleanor's. Okay, he whispered. I'll try to trust you. The first few days in Eleanor's mansion were the hardest of Leo's life. Not for the lack of comfort. On the contrary, there was too much comfort. The bed was too soft, the sheets smelled of chemicals that irritated his nose, and the silence of the night was deafening. Leo was used to sleeping with the sounds of the street. Sirens, fights, shouts, loud music. The mansion's silence made him anxious, kept him awake, waiting for some danger that never came. He had nightmares every night. He dreamt he was back on the street alone, hungry. Eleanor respected Leo's space. She didn't try to force conversations, didn't ask invasive questions, didn't act like he was a problem child who needed to be fixed. She was simply there, available, patient. She hired a nutritionist who prepared small, frequent meals to help the boy's malnourished body recover without overwhelming his system. She hired a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma who visited Leo 3 times a week. And most importantly, she kept her promise. Leo had the key to the door. He could leave whenever he wanted. On the 10th day, Leo tested this. He woke up at 5 in the morning, took the key, and left. Eleanor was in the kitchen having coffee. She looked at him, smiled faintly, and said only, "Come back whenever you're ready." Leo walked through the streets of his old neighborhood, visited the awning where he used to sleep, talked to Mr. Antonio, Miss Rose, and Marco. They were all happy to see him looking well. He stayed out the entire day. At 7 in the evening, he returned. Eleanor was on the couch reading a book. "Welcome back," she said simply. Leo felt something inside him break. She really had kept her word. Gradually, Leo began to open up. He told her about his mother, about the lonely nights on the street, about his fears, about the dreams he thought he would never achieve. Eleanor listened to everything with total attention, without interrupting, without judging. And she opened up too. She told him about the baby she had lost, about how the pain had almost destroyed her, about how she had lost faith in people. "You saved me, Leo," she said one night. "It wasn't just me who saved you. You showed me that genuine kindness still exists in the world. You gave me back my hope." 3 months after Leo moved into the mansion, Eleanor called him for an important meeting. In the conference room of her company, Vance Capital, were lawyers, accountants, and social consultants. "Leo, you asked that if I helped you, I also help other street children. I'm keeping that promise. I want to create a foundation called Kindness Has Value, dedicated to getting children off the streets with dignity, not charity. And I want you to be my lead consultant, because you know what really works, what the children need. Do you accept?" Leo looked at all those important adults waiting for his answer. 3 months ago, he was invisible. Now he was being consulted on decisions that would affect hundreds of lives. "I accept," he said in a firm voice, "but with conditions. First, no traditional orphanages, small group homes with a maximum of 5 children where they get individual attention. Second, the children have a voice in the decisions. Nothing is done for them without listening to them first. Third, the focus isn't just on getting them off the street, it's on giving them the tools to build their own futures." Eleanor smiled with pride. "Perfect. We'll do it exactly that way." In the following months, the Kindness Has Value Foundation began its operations. Not with fanfare, not with publicity, as Leo had requested. His story remained private, but the results spoke for themselves. In 6 months, 40 children were brought off the streets of New York. In a year, 200. In 2 years, the foundation expanded to Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami. And every child had a voice, had dignity, had a future. The story eventually leaked, as all good stories do, not from Eleanor or Leo, but from one of the helped children who shared their experience on social media. The entire country was moved. Hundreds of business leaders, inspired by the example, created their own initiatives. 12 American billionaires, specifically, adopted the concept of the extreme kindness test, but ethically, without putting anyone at risk, simply observing and rewarding genuine acts of kindness that happened naturally. The movement grew exponentially. 5 years after that day on the sidewalk, Leo was 17. He graduated from high school with honors, having been one of the top students in his class at the most prestigious private school in New York. He never asked for special treatment, never used his story as an excuse. He simply worked hard, studied relentlessly, and proved that potential exists in everyone. Only opportunities are lacking. At the graduation ceremony, he was chosen to give the farewell speech. Eleanor was in the audience, crying with pride before he even began to speak. Leo walked onto the stage in the new suit Eleanor had insisted on buying for the occasion. He still felt uncomfortable in elegant clothes, but he had learned to accept that some things were important to other people. He looked out at the audience, hundreds of faces, some familiar, many unknown. He took a deep breath and began. 5 years ago, I was invisible. I lived on the streets, I collected trash to survive, and I went hungry every day. The world looked at me with disgust, with fear, or it simply didn't look at all. One day I had only $10. $10 that represented 3 days of brutal work, 3 days of humiliation, 3 days of pain. It was everything I had in the world, and I found a woman crying, desperate, needing help. I gave her everything. Not because I was special, not because I was a saint, not because I expected a reward. I gave it because my mother, before she died, taught me a simple truth. Kindness doesn't depend on how much you have, but on how much you are willing to share. That woman was Eleanor Vance, and those $10 changed everything. But not in the way you might think. It wasn't her money that saved me. I didn't need to be saved, because I was never broken. What changed everything was the proof that kindness has real value in the world, that doing good is not naivety, it's not weakness, it's not foolishness. It is the most powerful thing that exists. Those $10 proved that love always triumphs over selfishness. Always. Leo's voice was firm now, full of conviction. Today, I have everything I need: a home, food, education, health, a future. But those $10 are worth more than any fortune because they proved something fundamental, that even when you have nothing, you can still change the world. I was a street kid with $10 and I changed the lives of hundreds of children. Imagine what you can do. You who have so much more than I had, imagine the power you hold in your hands if you choose to use it for good. The auditorium was in absolute silence. So I say to you, do not underestimate the power of a single act of kindness. Do not ignore the invisible people around you. Do not wait until you have a lot to start giving, because sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unlikely hearts. Sometimes a street kid with $10 teaches more about humanity than all the books you will read in college. And sometimes all someone needs to change the world is a chance to prove their worth. Thank you. Leo left the stage to a deafening standing ovation that lasted a full 5 minutes. Eleanor was waiting for him beside the stage, tears streaming down her face. She hugged Leo tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for teaching me what really matters." Leo smiled. "Thank you for believing I was worth it." That night, Eleanor took Leo to her private office. On the wall, in an elegant mahogany frame, were the original $10, the dirty, crumpled coins Leo had handed over 5 years earlier. Beneath them, a golden plaque read, "The most valuable investment I ever made, $10 that was worth 3 billion. And as they stood there looking at those coins that had changed 2 lives and inspired a national movement, Leo realized something important. He hadn't been saved by Eleanor, and Eleanor hadn't been saved by him. They had saved each other. Because that's what genuine kindness does. It builds bridges where there were only chasms. It turns strangers into family. It proves that in the end, we are all just humans trying to survive in a difficult world. And when we choose to help instead of ignore, we all win. The Kindness Has Value Foundation continued to grow. 5 years after that speech, more than 2,000 young people had been helped. 35% of them graduated from college. 60% found stable jobs. 100% recovered their dignity and hope for the future. And Leo, now 22, studying social work at Columbia University, dedicated his life to expanding the project. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot those left behind. And he never ever underestimated the power of $10 given with love. And on a quiet night, as Leo worked late organizing the foundation's expansion to the south, he found an envelope on his desk. Inside, a letter from Eleanor. "Leo, you once asked me why I should help you. The answer is simple. Because you reminded me that it's worth it to be human. Those $10 didn't buy my redemption. They proved that it was possible. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With eternal love, Eleanor." Leo carefully folded the letter and placed it next to the yellowed photo of his mother. He looked out the window at the lights of New York City. Somewhere out there was another child sleeping on the street, hungry, cold, and scared. But now, unlike 5 years ago, there was hope. There was a network of people who cared. There was a movement that proved that kindness has real value, and it all started with a 12-year-old boy who had only $10, but chose to give everything. Because sometimes the greatest miracles are born from the smallest gestures, and sometimes changing the world costs only $10 and all the courage in your heart.